Morning. Morning. Can I have another opportunity to stand up here and again proclaim the truth and tell about the gospel. So, before I start, if you would just pray with me. Oh, gracious Father, again we thank you for a beautiful Sunday. You brought us here for a reason. We're here safe. We're here for you, Father. So we ask that your presence be here with us, your presence be in us, and Lord, that we truly take what we hear today and it be your truth. That we take it and we're able to live your truth. To live our lives according to you, Father. So again, we thank you and praise you. In these names. Amen. And so I'm going to start by sharing a little bit about myself. I know I'm new here, and so I kind of want to talk a little bit about how I grew up. And so, as you know, I'm Filipino, but I was born here. And so, being born here, I went to a school that I was the only Filipino. But then when I went back home, I went to a Filipino household that still was the Filipino culture. I would go to a church that was still Filipino. But then again, I'd wake up and go to a school that was the American culture. So it was weird because I was not so much the Filipino culture, but also I still stood apart from those at school and from the American culture. And so one thing, I'm going to be honest, if you've spoken to me in Tagalog, I've probably only understood maybe 25% of it. I can't really understand Tagalog that well, and I can't speak it. And so it's weird because then when I go to a Filipino church or I meet new Filipinos, the first question that comes up in a conversation is, hey, can you speak Tagalog? And my answer is no. And so it's almost that follows is, oh, you can't be Filipino. You don't speak Tagalog. How is that possible? And so it's weird going to Filipinos, not being able to understand Tagalog that well, but then going to an American school and still standing apart from those around me. And so what I've come to learn was who I am and the culture that I have kind of come up with was this mixture of being Filipino and also being American, but not fully being what feels like Filipino or American at all. And so today, with that being said, we want to talk about our identity in Christ. And if you haven't been with us, we've been going through this series about safety and security. We've gone through our security and salvation. We've been talking about feeling safe in the presence of God, being able to trust in Him, knowing that He'll provide the safety and the security. And these are some of the things that we've talked about in the past. And so today, we're going to be closing that series, and to finish up, to feel safe and secure in who we are. While I was growing up, I always wondered, how come I didn't fit in the American culture, but how come I also stood out in my own Filipino culture? And it's just the situation, the circumstances, how I was raised. And so again, today, in our culture, it's always like we're constantly trying to figure out who we are. Sometimes we're born in a different country, we move. We're born here, but of a different ethnicity than those around us. We're constantly trying to figure out who we are. And that includes our purpose and what we're here to do, what we're called to do, what our career is going to be. All of this is tied into who we are and ultimately our identity. And so, knowing that's something that almost all of us can struggle with, who we are, we can go to Christ and know that He has told us our true identity. He's given us a truth when we're always constantly trying to figure out, having so many influences around us, telling us who you are. But we know we can go back to the truth and know that Christ who lives inside of us, and when we truly trust him and believe in him, that he'll show us. He'll tell us what our calling is. He'll tell us who we are. He'll give us that safety and security of who we are. So today, we're going to be looking at Ephesians chapter 1, verses 3 to 14. And to kind of stick along with, last week, we had Brother Wilson read the verses. Today, we're actually going to have Azeneth, and she's going to read it in Spanish. So if you could welcome Azeneth. This is a new thing. And again, we want to celebrate our diversity. We want to celebrate what our church and how our church is built together. This one?
Yeah. Okay. Alabemos a Dios, Padre de nuestro Señor Jesucristo, que por medio de Cristo nos has bendecido con toda suerte de bienes espirituales y celestiales. Él nos ha elegido en la persona de Cristo antes de crear el mundo para que nos mantengamos sin mancha ante sus ojos, como corresponde a consagrados a Él. Amorosamente nos ha destinado de antemano y por pura iniciativa de su benevolencia a ser adoptados como hijos suyos mediante Jesucristo. De este modo la bondad tan generosamente derramada sobre nosotros por medio de su Hijo querido se convierte en himno de alabanza a su gloria. Con la muerte de su Hijo y virtud de la riqueza de su bondad, Dios nos libra y nos perdona los pecados. ¡Qué derroche de gracia sobre nosotros al llenarnos de sabiduría y inteligencia y darnos a conocer sus designios más secretos! Los designios que benévolamente había decidido realizar por medio de Cristo, llevando la historia a su punto culminante y haciendo que todas las cosas, las del cielo y las de la tierra, recuperen en Cristo su unidad. El mismo Cristo en quien también nosotros participamos de la herencia a la que hemos sido destinados de antemano según el designio de Dios, que todo lo hace de acuerdo con los planes de su libre decisión. Así nosotros, los que habíamos puesto nuestra esperanza en la Mesías, no convertiremos en himno de alabanza a su gloria. Y también vosotros, los que habéis escuchado el mensaje de la verdad, la buena noticia de vuestra salvación, a creer en Cristo, habéis sido sellados con el Espíritu Santo prometido, que es garantía de nuestra herencia en orden a la liberación del pueblo adquirido por Dios, para convertirse en himno de alabanza a su gloria.
Amen. Thank you, Azeneth. So what we're talking about here in Ephesians, again, is identity. Being able to feel secure in who we are. And so in Ephesians 1, 3 to 14, we look at 4 things that God has to say about us. And what I want you guys to think about is the weight that God has when he says these things about us. For someone like me that likes playing basketball, if LeBron James were to say, I'm good, and really I'm not, but if he were to say, I'm good at basketball, I would feel good about myself. I would feel accomplished if he were to say I was good at basketball. And so imagine the weight that God holds, the one who created us, the one that has a plan for us, telling us who we are, who each and every one of you is. And so we're going to look at the first part. The first part is God chose you. I'm going to say again, God chose you. He selected you. He picked you out specifically. And we'll look at verse 4 specifically. For he chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight. Before creation, he chose you. He selected you. At the beginning of time, he knew everything and everyone. And so what feels like the first part of being able to feel secure in who we are, being able to feel safe in my own identity, starts with knowing that God chose you specifically. Chose you specifically in Christ to be holy and blameless. Let that sink in a little bit. Because the first thing that comes to mind when I think about being chosen was sometimes when I was at school and we had to choose lab partners. Right? Or we had to choose the people we had to do a project with. And it's that moment where the teacher says, okay guys, choose your partners. And sometimes I'd be sitting there and I'd see everyone else be paired up. And that feeling of not being chosen. It's not a good one. But what is good is knowing that God has chosen you through Christ to be a part of